Now, on March 11th, 2009, Harper gave a speech to kick off a 3-day conference of conservatives at a fundraising dinner for the Preston Manning Institute for Democracy called the Three Values of Conservatism, Faith, Family, and Freedom. And from that speech, Harper said, quote, "Faith in all its forms teaches that there is a right and wrong beyond mere opinion or desire. More importantly, it teaches us that freedom is not an end in itself. How freedom is exercised matters as much as freedom itself." So here we have many parliamentarians with an avowed religious bent, and yet they have a close relationship with alcohol and its abuse. You know, Stephen Harper's rejection of a joint occurred in his university years at the University of Calgary, getting that economics degree, a period when Harper engaged in binge drinking on most weekends. And he wasn't and isn't alone in that dangerous behavior. Alcohol kills 12,000 Canadians annually and is a component of most rapes, domestic violence, child abuse, and neglect, assaults, and dangerous behavior. Cannabis, on the other hand, is considered the world's most utilitarian plant, useful in the manufacture of clothing, industrial plastic substitutes, oils of all kinds. Its seeds contain essential fatty acids, omega-3 and 6, and can be made into a variety of breads, foods, and flours. The flowering tops can be used in medicine. The plant leaves itself and all other parts of the plant can be used for biomass fuels, and it is a non-toxic euphoric. Humans even have a specific cannabinoid receptor in the brain to receive its consciousness-raising attributes, as well as a cannabinoid receptor throughout the body, as do all mammals, to receive its medical and therapeutic benefits. On May 1st, 2009, Angus Reid poll done in British Columbia asked this question. The illegal marijuana industry is linked to much of gang violence on BC streets. Some say violence would be reduced if marijuana were legalized, while others say violence would decrease if penalties for marijuana trafficking were significantly increased. Do you believe that things would be better if marijuana were legalized? And 65% of British Columbians polled in that poll said yes, and 35% said yes, we should increase penalties. And nationwide, an Angus Reid poll of March 5th, 2009 showed that 50% of all Canadians want marijuana legalized, while 65% of respondents from British Columbia said they wanted marijuana legalized. The original 1993 reform platform promised more citizen input into the democratic process, yet not a single member of Canada's elected House of Commons, especially members of Parliament from British Columbia, have ever spoken on behalf of that 50% who want marijuana legalized, ever. Yet in the 2008 federal election, Conservative MP for Edmonton Strathcona, Rahim Jaffir, was defeated because he bought radio ads condemning NDP leader Jack Layton's support in 2003 for legalizing marijuana. Over the final weeks of that campaign, Jaffir spent $15,000 on these ads to defeat NDP rival Linda Duncan. You know, only one other NDP member of Parliament has ever even been elected from Alberta in the last 50 years. That was a guy named Ross Harvey, who was a one-term NDP MP from Edmonton East from 1988 to 1993. Duncan was a newcomer, and Jaffir had won his previous election 2 years earlier by over 5,000 votes. So here are Jaffir's two ads that ran on radio in the final 2 weeks of his campaign that swung the campaign over to his NDP opponent. The first one went, Edmontonians understand how difficult it is to make sure our children make the right choices, especially on serious issues like drug use. The Conservative Party supports drug-free schools and getting tough with drug dealers. Don't let our schools go up in smoke. Vote Conservative Rahim Jaffir. And radio ad number 2 aired extensively for 1 week before the October 14th, 2008 election date, and it went like this. Jack Layton and the Ottawa NDP have publicly supported the legalization of marijuana. In fact, when asked about marijuana, Jack Layton called it a wonderful substance which Canadians should be free to smoke at home or in a cafe. Edmontonians understand how difficult it is to make sure our children make the right choices, especially on serious issues like drug use. The Conservative Party supports drug-free schools and getting tough with drug dealers who sell illegal drugs to our children. Don't let our schools go up in smoke. On October 14th, vote Conservative. Now, here's the funny thing about all that. Jaffir lost that election, and Linda Duncan won, and many voters attributed those ads to turning them around and voting for the NDP. But Jaffir, once out of office, married Conservative MP Helen Gurgis, who's in the cabinet, and recently he was arrested drunk driving in possession of a bag of cocaine. And like most alcoholics and drug abusers, it's not likely this was Jaffir's first time behind the wheel on booze or using cocaine. Jaffer was a star Conservative MP from 1997 to 2008. He was chair of the Conservative caucus. He sat on the Parliamentary Standing Committee of Justice and Human Rights. During the time his party was formulating Bill C-15, Jaffer was a leading crusader against marijuana. Jaffer is still married to a cabinet minister in the Harper government, so he is politically relevant. Despite attempts by the Harperites to dismiss Jaffer's cocaine and booze-filled behavior as that of a private citizen, it is fair and accurate to say that Jaffer's view on drugs are expressed in Harper's decision to launch a war against that culture, and that Bill C-15 is the way to do that. By obtaining organized crime cocaine, Jaffer left himself, his cabinet minister wife, and thereby the Canadian government open to blackmail. Who was supplying Jaffer, and what do they want? In Colombia, Mexico, Afghanistan, organized crime supports democratic governments because prohibition compromises national security. Not the two groups who support the drug prohibition, police and politicians, drink a lot of booze, meet a lot of criminals, and take a lot of drugs. They are very vulnerable to blackmail and extortion. Have Harper's regressive prohibition laws, which he has admitted target a culture and not a crime, opened the Canadian government and law enforcement to infiltration by organized crime? Why are police, politicians, and gangsters the only ones who support prohibition? Who does prohibition help? Who does prohibition hurt? It helps police to build bigger budgets and get more repressive laws and give them fantastic latitude in violating our precarious constitutional safeguards. Prohibition helps gangsters and cartels make more money than even governments. And who does prohibition hurt? It hurts everyone else. It hurts our children, our families, our justice system, our healthcare system, our country. Prohibition corrupts everything decent in human society. Voters on October 14th endorsed what Jaffer tried to condemn, electing an NDP MP, and many voters cited Layton's strong verbal support of legalization as their motivation to get out and vote for Duncan. Of course, this only validates Harper's worldview that the cannabis culture is a left-wing idea, part of what Harper calls a philosophy of nihilism, and as I remind you, the nihilism is a belief that existing socio-political institutions need to be swept away to make improvements to society. Confirming Harper's worldview are MPs in Parliament who have at times been vocal in their support of the cannabis culture, and myself as leader of the cannabis culture, people like Libby Davies, Sven Robinson, Bill Sixay, Keith Martin. Well, Davies, Robinson, and Sixay are all left-wing and homosexual, and Martin is a liberal who defected from reform after accusing Harper of being a religious fundamentalist. And then there's somebody like Randy White. He was the Reform Conservative Alliance Conservative MP for Abbotsford Mission from 1993 to 2005. And you know what? He confessed to me over lunch in 2004 that he was an alcoholic for 15 years of his adult life, frequently driving drunk and behaving abusively on alcohol before he became clean and sober. Sobriety did not make White a more compassionate man as an MP, however, when it came to persecuting the cannabis culture. White is now a Christian fundamentalist who has a fondness for Scientology, who frequently railed at the cannabis culture. And Matthew Johnson, Raheem Jaffer's executive assistant, told me of an incident where in an Ottawa bar in 2001 regarding rookie Conservative MP James Moore. I had occasion to debate Moore in his Port Coquitlam riding in the November 2000 federal election about marijuana legalization. I was a marijuana party candidate that year. And Moore was opposed to any normalization of the cannabis culture, and in fact added during a debate, I think the stigma against marijuana use and marijuana use is a good thing and should continue. Johnson, now publisher of the online Western Standard.ca, was with Moore in an Ottawa bar in early 2001. Moore was getting increasingly drunk and began propositioning a woman nearby rather explicitly, and she rebuffed Moore's drunken advances. Upon rejection, Moore drank more and brooded. As he left the bar, he went up to the woman and threw a glass full of alcohol right in her face and called her a whore very loudly in front of Johnson and 3 other Canadian Alliance executive assistants. Other well-known alcoholic abusers and drug prohibitionists in politics include BC Premier Gordon Campbell, convicted of drunk and dangerous driving, and former Alberta Premier Ralph Quine, who once, when wildly drunk, went into a homeless shelter to berate and abuse indigent men there. Former BC Solicitor General Rich Coleman, who handed over the Marc Emery file, to the DEA when he was Solicitor General in 2005 and cooperated to have a U.S. indictment against my seed-selling activities done, was an abusive drunk for many, many years. Jack Layton used to be a pot smoker as recently as 2004, and he did that great interview on Pot TV in October in 2003. He used to be toking with students at NDP clubs on university campuses all over Canada from 2003 to 2004.